Welcome back to Talk the Walk. With me now is Ronny Tong, Executive Councillor and former Chairman of the Bar Association. Thank you again, Mr. Tong, for joining us. Now, the Democratic lawmakers, they argue that they follow the rules of procedures, they've done everything right. And they accused the disqualification as further proof that Beijing want to stem out the opposition and Beijing just can't stand dissent in the city. What can you tell us about Beijing's motive behind the move?
Well, this resolution is directed only towards conduct which challenge the right to rule of the central government and challenge the territorial integrity and national security of the entire nation. So we're not talking about opposition, right? As I say, the legislators, of course, are always entitled to oppose any policy they don't like, but they cannot try to undermine national safety or undermine the national political system, right? So we're talking about two entirely different things. This resolution does not outlaw all of the opposition. A lot of democratic legislators tried to seek for re-election in July. All of them were allowed to run for election apart from these four. So it is not right to say that there was any attempt to try to oust the opposition. If there were, then none of the Democrats will be able to seek re-election, and all of them will be disqualified. But that is plainly not the case.
Why do you think the central government didn't mention the national security law? Because critics and some of the pro-establishment lawmakers said those four lawmakers could as well be charged under the national security law for the guilt of subversion. Why don't you think the central government brought it up?
This is a common error. The national security law deals with criminal offenses, right? In other words, if you infringe the law, you have to go to jail, right? Now, we're not talking about that at all. We're talking about the legal rights to remain electoral, right? The four legislators being disqualified will not be sent to jail. They will not be prosecuted. They can't be prosecuted in any event because under the national security law, the requirements of the various various offences are very specific. They're very clear, and they require additional elements other than espousing an intention not to uphold the basic law, which itself is not a criminal offence. So we were talking about entirely different things. There is no indication at the moment.
Do you think there won't be further prosecutions against those disqualified lawmakers?
Well, from what I hear, what I see at the moment, there isn't. But of course, I can't rule out that if they had contravened the various elements set out in the statute, and there are credible evidence, and the Secretary for Justice has given her written consent, then of course they can be prosecuted like everybody else. But at the moment, the way as I see it, I don't see any evidence that they have committed any crime.
Okay, so Democratic Party Chairman Wu Chi-wai said all Democratic lawmakers will resign en masse if the disqualifications were indeed pressed ahead. How do you think Beijing will react to that? And does a legislature without the opposition undercut the legitimacy of future government policies? What's your take?
Well, I have said openly yesterday and before that I think it would be detrimental to the credibility and the entire political situation in Hong Kong if the Democrats were to leave LegCo. I, in fact, appealed to them yesterday that they should not resign or block from LegCo. But of course, I respect the their decision. It is their decision that they want to leave electrical. Now, that act itself indicates that they, how should I put it, have serious reservations about the authority of NPCS. And that itself puts them in a difficult position, to say the least, to carry on any kind of engagement with Beijing. I would view it as a complete breakdown of relation between the Pan-Democrats and Beijing, and that is not a good thing. Not a good thing. Not only it would mean that there is no hope of any democratic reform in the future, but also that the political differences in Hong Kong would continue to widen. I would say the international reaction would also be very hostile to both China and to Hong Kong. So it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to anybody, and it doesn't help, doesn't benefit anybody. I fear that we're on the path of mutual destruction.
You mentioned, actually, Beijing mentioned patriotism, and Beijing said that's going to be a requirement for any lawmakers who's going to be sworn into office in the future. But how could patriotism be nurtured under such a hostile environment?
Well, that doesn't appear in the resolution. The resolution deals with conduct which is not acceptable to the country as a whole. There is no requirement that legislators must be diehard patriots. But of course, if you look around, in other countries, that is a necessary requirement. Here, we're rather talking about the negative requirement, i.e., that you should not use your position to undermine the authority and safety of the country.
Okay, I want to read you some data here. So Hong Kong's press freedom has ranked the 80th in the Hong Kong Press Freedom Index this year, and its Freedom House score is 55 out of 100. Is that the direction you prefer to see that Hong Kong is heading towards?
Now, indices put out by think tanks, and I run a think tank, and I also run an index, right? So I understand what we're talking about. Indices run by think tanks is a measurement of perception, how people read things, right? It may not necessarily coincide with the facts on the ground, right? So when we talk about press freedom, I understand that the current perception of a lot of people is that press freedom in Hong Kong is being questioned. But if you look around, that is not the case. I mean, every day, everybody write articles and appear on television, appear on radio, and criticize Carrie Lam, criticize the government, criticize ex-commandants. Singapore has got a piece of legislation criminalizing fake news, false news, right? That is an infringement on press freedom, right? But other countries are looking into that area as well, because there are just far too many fake news around the world. If you listen to Donald Trump, you will see that he talked about fake news every day of the week, right? Now, is that erosion of press freedom by accusing the media of putting out fake news every day? Is Donald Trump undermining and putting pressure on press freedom in America? Compare that with what is happening in Hong Kong. Is Carrie Lam doing that? So,
well, I don't think any journalist was arrested under Donald Trump's administration, but there is a journalist arrested in Hong Kong, the RTHK producer. So by your standards, is Hong Kong doing worse than America?
wait a minute, let's get this clear, right, once and for all, because I find it extremely difficult to understand. Are you saying that reporters can't be arrested for committing a crime? If a reporter goes out and kills somebody, you said that you can't arrest him because otherwise there would be a denial of press freedom? Surely you can't be saying that, right? You can't be saying that. There's no reporter being arrested because he is reporting.
All right, okay. Okay, that's not what I'm saying at all, but I'm just laying out the facts that...
I'm not sure what you're saying, because the example you quoted is completely out of context.
Okay, well, unfortunately, time is up. That's all the time we have this week. Thank you, Mr. Tong, for joining us. We appreciate your time. And thanks, Q, for joining us. We'll see you next week right here on Talk the Walk.
Thank you. Bye.